Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 182 News Podcast. This is your host, Poppin' Curbs, and I really appreciate you making me a part of your day. Today's episode is going to kick off what I think is going to end up being a three-part series with Blink-182 Online board legend Davey Jones. So if you're on the forums, you know the name. If not, Davey is a true old school fan, really one of the only true old school fans I know of who's came forward and really just provided a wealth of information about the early days. Anytime Davey posts something, you're going to learn something, fascinating insight, because really it's almost the opposite of what the vast majority of fans are. Most of the fans, jumped on board with Enema and followed them throughout that, whereas Davey's going to take us back into what it was like in 95, 96, 97 as a diehard Blink fan. He was going to tons of shows. He was friends with the band, guest list at Soma, hung out in Mark's apartment. He has some great stories about that. He was in the Josie music video. So just some really fascinating stories and perspective from Davey. When I first started this podcast, I knew he was somebody I just had to get on. So really cool stuff. He has some incredible photos from the early days. This is back when there weren't cell phones. You actually weren't even allowed to bring cameras in. You had to sneak in a disposable on your nutsack and take some pictures that way. We're going to be sharing those throughout the week on the Blink-182 Online social media accounts, so keep an eye out for those. In the meantime, this is going to be a short intro for me. I'm going to jump straight into this because it's a longer episode. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation with Davey. Super appreciative of him taking time to hop on. We were silly enough to think that we would be able to knock this out in a 2-hour interview, and the first night we spoke for 4.5 hours. So it's going to be a long one, but it's worth it. I'm going to break it up, I think, into 3 parts. So without further ado, let's jump into the conversation. Really hope you enjoy it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now joining us on the 182 News Podcast, Blink-182 Online legend, Davey Jones. Davey, what's up, man?
Hey, how you doing, Ryan?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. So for the listeners who don't know, Davey is a true old school Blink fan. He followed the band. He was on the guest list. He was in the Josie music video, no big deal. And so Davey joined the board several years ago and has just provided so much rad information. He's the resident board historian. Pretty much every time Davey posts something, you're going to learn something. So when I was putting together this podcast, Davey, you were one of the people I knew I had to get on. So I really appreciate you taking time to hop on. I've been looking forward to this.
Hey, thanks very much for the invitation. You can hear me okay, yeah?
Yeah, sound great. So I want to get into, I don't know a ton about your background. Let us know where you're from, kind of what leads you into the first time you heard of Blink, how you got involved with kind of this scene where you were seeing Blink all the time.
Okay, so let's reach down into the memory hole. I was born and raised in Southern California in South Orange County, which is about halfway between Los Angeles and San Diego. I grew up skateboarding and got into the punk scene in the early 90s, kind of when I was in junior high transitioning to high school. The first punk show I ever went to was Pennywise. The second one was Bad Religion. So like Pennywise, Bad Religion, NoFX was like the holy trinity for me and my friends in the scene growing up. So this would have been like 93, 94. So come around to 95, my girlfriend, Annie, who we'll get to a little bit later, my high school girlfriend at the time, we started, going to shows a lot, but always in LA. It was always about driving up to LA. It was about 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on traffic, going to the Whiskey at Go-Go, going to the Palladium, going to the Palace. Like that's where I saw Weezer at the Hollywood Palladium in 94 and 95. So it was always about going to LA or, catching whatever we could in Orange County. San Diego for us was kind of off the radar. And it's interesting because getting into Blink really attached me to the San Diego scene, attached me to the Soma scene where I wasn't going to LA as much. I was driving down to San Diego to grab a burrito and get an energy drink at 7-Eleven and walk across the street to Soma. That's what it became all about. So the first time I saw Blink was at a benefit show called Surf Aid. It was a benefit for the Surfrider Foundation. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They do a lot of pollution beaches cleanup activity. Very active in Southern California. They've put out several music comps over the years. So this is a benefit show for them at a venue called the Pyramid. The Pyramid was at California State University Long Beach. It was their basketball arena. I wasn't going to see Blink. I was just lucky enough to catch them there on the bill. I was there to see other bands like Skank and Pickle and Unwritten Law, and I think Dancehall Crashers was playing, and Guttermouth, just a soup of all the bands in the scene that I was into. Blink was a happy accident for us. And I happened to see them just days before they officially changed their name to Blink-182. So I did see them as Blink. I bought Cheshire Cat at that show as Blink without the 182 on it.
Yeah, so what date was that?
Your
first time seeing them?
I'm going to have to pull up the ticket stub. If you give me just a second, I've got it here.
Yeah. So it's 95. So this is in Cal State's gym?
Yeah, Cal State Long Beach, their basketball arena is called the Pyramid. I believe to this day it's still called the Pyramid.
Okay.
So I might as well keep my ticket stub archive up and open if I need to refer to it. Actually, okay, interesting. So this was Saturday, August 5th, 1995. Wow. The name change was made official per Cargo and Rick Devo's management 2 days prior. And I believe I remember Tom making a joke about we're not Blink anymore or something at the show. But they were still calling themselves Blink. All the merch was still Blink. The CD, of course, was still Blink. And interesting, I'm looking at this ticket stub. I got it signed by Bruce Lee, who, of course, is a founder of Asian Man Records and the singer for Skank and Pickle.
Sweet. So your girlfriend and you at the time, you're catching shows in LA, then you kind of venture out to San Diego. Is this like a weekend thing? Like this is what you guys do on Friday night, Saturday night?
Well, weekdays too. I mean, the thing about growing up in Southern California during that time is there were shows every single night of the week. I saw Blink sometimes more than once in a week, and this is just driving around between Los Angeles, between the Inland Empire, Riverside, San Diego area, even up further afield. I would go to Santa Barbara to see them or Ventura.
So you go to this show, and so this is August 5th, 1995, and you're not there to see Blink, but what catches your eye or ear? I mean, I'm assuming they were playing earlier in the day. What was it that drew you to them?
Well, it's interesting. It really was love at first sight and love at first listen. And truly, I think it was that way for a lot of us. Blink really stood out at the time. Early Blink style is kind of hard to peg down. And I think that's one of the reasons they caught on so strongly in the Southern California scene. So epiphat is the term we use to refer to like all the sort of, I say generic, but lovingly, because I love that sound, but all the sort of generic, either Epitaph Records or Fat Records fans. So NoFX, Pennywise, Bad Religion, anyone following in their footsteps. They sounded kind of the same. I love that sound, but they did. And Blink, they stuck out, okay? So you've got Tom's style, which is an odd combination of muted bar chords and octaves. And he's got these arpeggiated major scales. And he's doing like these AC/DC hammer-ons. Like no one was doing that. And then Mark's playing chords on the bass, which, as many of you listeners probably know, he aped that style off Ned's Atomic Dustbin, which is the British band with two bass players. One of them would play chords, and the other would play a normal bass line. So chords on a bass, hammer-ons and arpeggios and octaves on the guitar. I don't know how to say it, but in 95, if you were a 16-year-old in the scene, the band stood out. You remembered watching them play. Yeah. And then there was their personality and their sense of humor, which I don't know how it got in later years because I wasn't around for that, but it just was super genuine. And I think the third thing, Rye, is that they were us. You know, I wasn't a sixth grader looking up to like my dad, you know, being in sixth grade and looking up to the Beatles as guys in their mid to late 20s with that like childish hero worship, right? Like I was older than Scott Rayner. I was only a year and a half or two from Tom and only a few more years from Mark. So like that was the hook. These were guys we could have bumped into at a party the night before, you know, and the fact that they were the audience, I think at least until Enema, when their, you know, their listenership got much wider, that was such a key part of their appeal. And I remember distinctly getting in the car. We had bought Cheshire Cat on CD. I bought it from Ann Hoppus, and probably Cam Jones was sitting there too. And, you know, I put it in, you know, back in the day, you had a Discman that you then hooked into the stereo jack, the headphone jack in your car.
Oh, yeah.
Playing the Discman on the drive back from Long Beach. And like Carousel played, and we were like, wow. You know, and these were songs that they all had all just played in their set.
Yeah.
And then after Carousel, Eminem's. And by the time we got to Touchdown Boy, it was like we were completely in love with this band on the drive home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're seeing them during that first show or whatever, I mean, was the crowd super into them? I mean, obviously they weren't even anywhere close to blowing up yet, but you know, was there a lot of energy in the crowd? Was it dead? Were you in the front and the back? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to be in the pit during those times. As I got a little slightly older and a little more brave, I'd want to be on the barricade in front of the pit. But usually we'd be at the rear of the pit. That's a good place to play defense, right? With the mosh pit right in front of you, kind of mid-crowd. I will say I have a distinct vision of standing there at the Long Beach show, and right in front of me was a dude wearing the navy blue Buddha shirt with the handicap symbol. Like that was the guy standing directly in front of me in the middle of the crowd.
Yeah.
All those shows back then were completely wild. You know, people crowd surfing, mosh pit. There's no one standing around, no one judging, none of that stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone that was into the scene at these shows was into the scene at these shows.
So you guys are rocking out to Cheshire on the way home.
On the drive home, yeah.
On the drive home, you're in love with this band immediately. So when do you catch them next?
Let's see.
And how did you find this stuff out? See, people forget that the internet was not around at this time. So you had to see like
there was no internet, man.
You had to see a
flyer, like AOL or Prodigy or something.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you find out about the next show or track them down, start learning about them, and then
every town had a free weekly, right? And sometimes regionally. So OC had a weekly, LA had a weekly, Riverside had a weekly, San Diego had more than one. There was a North County Reader, and then there was a San Diego one. So you'd go to the Tower Records or the Warehouse or the skate shop often or the surf shop often. I grew up in San Juan Capistrano, which is right next to San Clemente. It's a huge surfing community. So the surf skate, that's where all the flyers would be put up in the local record stores, all in the windows. But you'd grab the weekly every freaking week because you'd open up the back. And then I'm sure you've seen the ads that are like these long, narrow columns. Yeah. And it's like show. And we'd literally get a freaking highlighter and be like, boom, 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 seeing that. Oh, man, Saturday, Guttermouth and the Vandals are playing. Which one do we go to? Like, that was my weekly life for years.
Wow. So you find out Blink's playing again soon, I presume. And so, you know, for one, how much did it cost to get into these shows? Like $5?
$5, yeah. I mean, I'll tell you right now because I have the ticket stub. For Surf Aid 95. Now, granted, I was seeing about 25 bands.
Yeah.
So for 25 bands, that was $14.50.
Oh, fuck.
And the Ticketmaster fee, damn them, $2.50.
They've come a long way.
So that was for 25 bands.
Wow.
You know, Blink at Soma. Let's see. Yeah, Blink at Soma. I mean, if they were opening for a really more popular band like the Circle Jerks, you know, you might pay $10. I mean, it's important to point out that, I mean, it's all perspective, right? So like now in 2020, as a Blink fan, wow, Grandpa, you're old school. But actually, I was a real newcomer to the band, right? Only seeing them for the first time in mid 1995, right? Summer 1995. So, yeah, you know, there's 2, 3 years of people before me that were, crazy, obsessed with, in love with this band. Like that guy standing in front of me at Long Beach already had the Buddha t-shirt on.
Yeah.
Everyone wore that t-shirt, by the way, man. That navy t-shirt with the bunny in the circle and then the handicap emblem on the back. I think there was a white one, a blue one, a red one. Everyone had that shirt, and that was the badge that you were old school. If you were in line at Soma and you had a Buddha era shirt on in like 95, 96, like look out, that guy's OG. So
That's
it's
dope.
interesting. I was a latecomer, right?
Yeah.
Relative to that scene. I'm sorry, where were we going with this?
Well, we're talking about the next time you saw them, but
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, after that listening with Cheshire, I was like, holy shit, yes. I'm going to follow these guys everywhere. I've been following NoFX and Pennywise and Bad Religion and the Vandals and Guttermouth and every other band in the scene. Well, here's another one to move right to the top of the list. So every time Blink played and I was able to go within, Santa Barbara to Ventura to Inland Empire, Riverside, all throughout LA, Orange County, and San Diego, I would see them. So I probably saw them. Again, I only have ticket stubs for like those shows that were like through Ticketmaster, right? So a lot of these were door shows. You paid $5 cash at the door. You paid $8 cash at the door. So I don't have stubs for a lot of these, but I probably saw Blink maybe 25 times before Scott Raynor left the band, and then however many times after that. So
wow.
I've probably seen them 35 or 40 times maybe.
What was the fan base like at that time? Like, did you see the same people at the shows? Did they have a pretty loyal following at that time? Was there a sense of like tightness among the group? How was it?
That's interesting. Both me and my high school girlfriend at the time were more introverted types. But yeah, there was definitely camaraderie always in the pit. You always picked people up when they fell down. You always respected, especially women, when they were crowd surfing. Someone tries to grab someone inappropriately, they'd get the shit kicked out of them. There was a real, when people say like punk rock saved my life or whatever, I think what they're referring to is that sense of community. And I felt that the entire time I was in the scene. And what's great about a lot of the bands, and especially Blink, is they encouraged that close relationship with their audience. That's the whole reason, and we'll get into this, why I ended up hanging out and spending time with them is after the show, there's no like backstage in this world. Mark would just come out front and have a cigarette and he's talking to you in the parking lot just like anyone else. And no one's fawning for autographs. We were, there was a very, psychologists call it a leveling spirit. There was a very leveling spirit. We're like, if you bumped into Greg Graffin in front of the Hollywood Palladium, he'd talk to you for a few minutes. That's just kind of how it was.
And that's what's so interesting about your perspective versus probably the vast majority of folks. So you're, 95 through 98, whereas the rest of the fans are basically, 99 on, late 98 on. So it's such a fascinating perspective to hear kind of your insight on this. So as you're going to more and more shows, it sounds like you're constantly wanting to be right up front. And I've seen some amazing photos you have, and we're going to be sharing some of those on the Blink-182 online social media accounts. So everybody keep an eye out for those. So, what was it that you just loved about the shows that just kept you going? Was it the music? Was it the camaraderie, the energy, all of the above?
Well, there was one point where things got kind of personal and cool. So, seeing them a handful of times, they went away for the Good Times tour, right? That was the first time they kind of got in that white van that they had and kind of went cross country and back. So didn't see them for a little bit there in the sort of late summer into fall 95. But then like mid to late fall 95, they came back around, saw them a few times. And this was a show that for whatever reason was rescheduled. Blink was playing with Rhythm Collision at the Galaxy. This would have been, I think, October, and it got rescheduled for maybe December. I can't recall. And it was at this show that we sort of first hung out, had a conversation, and it was with Hoppus. And my girlfriend, her name is Annie. I don't know if I mentioned. We were on the barricade like we always were. This was a great show, man. The first time that Less Than Jake was like playing in California, so they were touring behind Pezcore, which was their first release before getting like signed to a major capital and doing a losing streak. So they were playing, and then Homegrown was the other opener, and Blink was playing. And they were the headliner. Rhythm Collision, I guess, had to shift off because of the change in the show schedule. And so we were there. We were right up on the barricade. This was actually an Orange County venue called the Galaxy Concert Theater. And my girlfriend Annie were right there, right front and center of the band. And we asked Mark to play Wasting Time. And he dedicated it specifically because he recognized this to me and my girlfriend.
Sweet.
He said, "Hey, Wasting Time is for you two," because he had recognized us from shows.
Yeah.
And then after the show, a few of us, I want to say Tom was in and out. Rainer was like loading the van, but Mark, who still smoked at the time, was like having a cigarette, and we kind of sat down like Indian style in a circle. Him and some others, Cam Jones was there, just kind of bullshitting. After the show and everyone was packing out, and we were saying hi to Les and Jake, and they were loading up. And I remember Mark was so proud that they had a tour van now. And he pointed to it, and he was like, "That's our van."
Wow.
It was the Econoline, Ram white van that I'm sure you've seen pictures and video of.
Yeah.
And it was just like, hey, we just hung out and talked and told them how much we liked the music and the band. And, and Mark and Tom were always like, "Hey, see you at the next show." It was always, "Hey, see you at the next show." And so we did. And again, and then again, and again, and again. But that was that first moment of kind of like personal conversation. That was so cool. You dedicated a song to us, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's really cool. One of the last podcast guests, an artist by the name of Terminal Radness, he said he always felt that Blink was kind of like their cooler older brother. And I feel that same way. It's just so cool. Like, we all, obviously being pretty hardcore fans, have some sort of connection where, you feel like you said, they're approachable. You feel like you could hang out with them, have a conversation with them, and they're just, fairly everyday people, which is so rad. By the way, how long were they headlining at that point?
Oh, good question. So at that first show I saw them at, the Surfrider benefit, they were in the middle of the mix. They were not close to headlining. By the time I was seeing them at this Galaxy show, and I think it was December, the rescheduled show, they were the headliners. Like, Les and Jake was the middle, and Homegrown was the opener. Wow. So Homegrown was a local Orange County band. Less Than Jake, touring from out of state, not really well known in California yet. And Blink was the headliner.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always hear them say that, their biggest goal was to headline at Soma. And, I've never been to San Diego or Soma, but by the way, can you describe Soma for those of us who've never been there? I mean, is it just like a dinky place? I mean, does it still exist? I know it does in some form, but is that the same location?
So as far as I know, there have been 3 iterations of Soma. The first Soma was closer to downtown San Diego, and that featured the side stage known as the Dungeon. And that's where Blink sort of came up through the ranks. By the time I was seeing Blink at Soma, it was the second iteration, Soma version 2, which was a warehouse kind of where the 5, there's like a freeway interchange where you come down through Mission Valley. And right where the freeway split off from the 5 is where that second warehouse was. It was pretty rad. I think it used to be like a carpet factory or something like that. And it was just a warehouse with a parking lot, and it was on a cul-de-sac. So like, it was cool. Like, you queue up to enter along the curve of the cul-de-sac on the road. And then across the street, there was like a burrito shop and a 7-Eleven. So you'd park your car down the street somewhere where you could get free parking or whatever. You get a burrito, you get a drink at 7-Eleven before or after the show. So that was the version 2. Version 3 of the Soma, I believe, is still their current location, if it hasn't closed, which is right near the San Diego Sports Arena.
Okay.
And, I think that's where Blink did their like preview show in San Diego with Skiba shortly before they played Moose Inc. would have been at that location.
Okay.
And I saw shows there after kind of my time seeing Blink. Yeah, I've seen Face to Face there and Alkaline Trio and stuff like that.
Yeah, obviously legendary venue in the Blink world. We hear about it all the time, and story goes that you would tell the guy at the door, I'm here to see Blink, and if enough people did it, they'd move you to the main stage. And obviously they got to that point, which was just super rad.
Yeah, and that Up Through the Ranks happened. I didn't see that. That happened at the first version of Soma. I was at the second one. But I mean, this is a place where Strung Out would play the side stage. I watched Strung Out with, I don't know, 30 people trying to make a little mosh pit happen.
Yeah.
And then when the show was on the main stage, the side stage area is where they put the merch tables. So
Okay.
basically, that would all be over there, and that'd be a place to just mull and hang out and, I don't know, make out with your girlfriend and get a drink of water or something. When the show was happening on the main stage.
One thing that always blows my mind about some of these old videos I see in concert footage is how everybody, like, it was just so common for people to run up on the stage like
Mhm.
lunatics,
Oh yeah.
flail around, and then just jump off. Like today, that would never happen. You'd get speared like so quickly by a security guard.
Yeah. I mean, I sang on stage with Blink more than once.
It's just crazy, man. It's such a different time. It's cool.
Well, I mean, on that note, Rye, the tradition was they'd invite someone up to sing the bridge slow breakdown of Benoit Blancs. That would always be the time when Mark or Tom would pick someone out and get him come up. I mean, you can see videos on YouTube of people doing it. I don't
Yeah.
think there's a video of me doing it, but I did it more than once. And that was just, they'd say to security, "Hey, I want that person, I want that guy," and then
Yeah.
security would let them come up from the barricade over to the side and then come up to the mic. And then the etiquette, if you've seen Blink more than once, was you'd sing that wah 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 part, and then the minute they went back to fast, that's when you would leap out into the crowd and crowd surf.
Nice. What were like the crowd favorites at that time?
Well, it's interesting. Their set list was remarkably consistent from '95. I'd say up until Dude Ranch was released. They always closed with Toast and Bananas, and they always opened with Touchdown Boy. And things would shift in and out, and Lemmings would drop in or Uranus Tracks would drop in, but that was really consistent. The Benoit Balls audience moment was very consistent, '96 through '97. So I mean, it's hard to say favorites. You loved every song.
Yeah.
None of this stuff was on the radio, man. None of these bands were acknowledged to exist outside of you, your friends, and the shows you went to.
Yeah, it's so wild. And one of the things I just saw the other day when there was one of the first Blink websites that came up, and I guess you had contributed either lyrics or guitar tabs. But what's
I think both.
interesting,
Yeah.
may have been both, but what people don't realize is back then that you couldn't just look this shit up. So if you wanted to know the words to a song or how the hell to play a song, I mean, you had to watch it or listen and learn.
Yeah, I mean, I have printouts I made of some of those early websites in '95 or '96. It says the date and time at the top in Microsoft Internet Explorer. Yeah, and it'd be like a GeoCities site, and it would say, Blink next show. Like people would get the readers and figure out, okay, here are the next 5 shows. They'll be at the Barn in Riverside on this date, and of course, no one would update it. So you'd find this website, and the shows were all from 6 months ago.
That's funny. So you and your girlfriend at the time are kind of going to as many Blink shows as you can. You're a part of the scene. It gets to the point where Mark has recognized you, almost feeling friendly on a personal level. So, walk the listeners through how really that relationship kind of continues and grows to the point of where you're on the guest list. We need to get into how you're in the Josie music video, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I mean, I told you kind of my first little Mark story, and then I kind of have my first Tom story, and then later I have a Rainer story, so it's kind of interesting.
Let's do it.
Yeah, the Tom story would be, so I graduated high school in '96, so like June '96 is when I would have done my cap and gown. So to rewind, so when I first saw them would have been the summer between my junior and senior year. So senior year, man, senioritis, like fuck off with classes. I'm just going to shows all the time. And Blink had an awesome headlining show, a big one, at the Orange Dome, which is on the fairgrounds out in Inland Empire in Riverside, like the Orange Festival or whatever was out there. And it was this weird venue that was definitely larger than Soma. It was not like Palladium big, but it was larger than Soma.
Yeah.
My girlfriend and I were on the barricade, and at some point, I want to say towards the end of the show, and I didn't take photos of the show, but I found photos online from the show. At some point towards the last songs in the set, a crowd surfer came over us and kicked my girlfriend Annie in the back of the head.
Mm.
Her face went directly into the barricade, which is just like a big steel bar,
Yeah.
and just boom, and her blood all over her face, like
Fuck.
bleeding lip, cut gum, like this, right? And Tom sees this happen and is like horrified. Like he's horrified that, not only someone got injured, a freaking girl got injured at my show on the barricade.
Yeah.
So fortunately, this happened right towards the end of the show, and it's bleeding, right? And Tom and Mark both recognize that it's us and that it's my girlfriend Annie's that freaking lip is bleeding, right? So I don't remember the specifics, but the show ended. And then Tom and Mark were like, dude, come backstage with us. So we came backstage, and whoever the security nurse person is with the bouncers, whoever has like the school nurse with the ice water or whatever, like treated her lip. And then I'll never forget this. They didn't drive their van up. They freaking drove their car. So there's Tom's, he had a red Toyota pickup with a blink. I'm sure you've seen them. It's the square sticker that's the handicap icon, and it just says blink, and then Times New Roman bold, all lowercase red. He had that in the corner of his cab window. And he's just like loading his guitars, like the M&M's video, into his pickup truck. And he's, he comes over and talks to us, like, Mark's like, we have a conversation with him, and Tom's like, dude, you okay? I'm so sorry that happened. I'll never forget this, and I still have the flyer, and I have a scan of it, Ryan. It's the show flyer from that day, and on the back, Tom says, sorry about the lip, Tom.
You shared that before. I think it's in my signature study.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry about the lip, Tom.
That's great. Yeah, we'll pull that
ask
up.
For an autograph, he just made a joke of it. He's like, here. And he I think he turned me around and wrote it on my back. He said, sorry about the lip, Tom.
That's awesome.
And then he made some remark like, you happy, or something like that. Then we just, as usual, we just hung out a little bit and then we left.
Were they regularly available at the merch booth afterwards?
Yes. I would hang out and talk with them at the merch booth. I would say the last time I recall them actually being at the table was probably Warped 97. But I would assume, especially going outside of California, they're trying to meet people to grow their audience, right? So, they're touring with Lagwagon in Spain. No one knows who the hell they are. Of course, they're going to take the time. Yeah. And you can see lots of videos online. I saw a great one from New Year's Eve. I think it was New Year's Eve 97 in Salt Lake City. And the camcorder literally starts with them hanging out with Mark at the merch table.
Yeah, we posted that recently. Somebody posted that in the timeline on the forums.
So I'd say, at least from my experience, all the way through summer 97, super common. They were always there, goofing. I mean, when I got my short bus signed, it was from Rainer and Tom, that was, when was that? That was the Soma New Year's Eve show, 95 into 96. So that would have been just days or maybe a week after that Galaxy show where I hung out with Mark, with him and my girlfriend. So they recognized us again at that show. Tom was in the bathroom. So I only have my short bus 7-inch, which I bought right then, signed by Mark. And back then it was just Mark Hoppus and Scott Raynor. I don't have a Tom because Tom had to go to the bathroom. So he wasn't. So they'd always be at the merch table. They'd sign stuff for you. They'd have a conversation with you.
That's dope.
They always had a joke. They had a sign. I don't know if you've seen this. They had a sign taped up at the merch table always in those days that said, CDs $10, T-shirts $10. I think the short bus 7-inch was $5, and then it would say, sperm samples or sperm donations free.
That's funny.
That was always up there.
So there's your Tom story. We've had your Mark story. So what's the Scott story?
So my awesome Rainer story is, this was January 97, right? So Dude Ranch has been recorded. They have a rough mix, but it has not been mastered, nor has it been prepped for release, right? And I remember this night was very rainy, and Blink was playing, let's see, it would have been with Unwritten Law, and I think it was Homegrown. This would have been Friday, January 24th, 1997 at the Ventura Theater. This is if you don't know Ventura, it's north, halfway between Santa Barbara and Los Angeles, so north of Los Angeles on the coast. Ventura Theater was a great venue. I mean, I've seen tons of bands there because they had a general admission floor, and then they had a separate balcony area if you wanted to sit. So set up very much like the Fox Theater in Oakland,
Yeah.
or like the Metro in Chicago, very much like that. So yeah, this was one where we stayed at, coincidentally, we stayed at the same Motel 6 that Blink was staying. I'll never forget this show because not Scott Rayner, Scott, singer of Unwritten Law, was totally drunk and on who knows whatever else. Tried to get into a car with my girlfriend. That was a wild night, dude. Scott was always, not Scott Rayner, Scott from Unwritten Law, was always a drunk and always trouble with the ladies. I didn't say that. I didn't tell you that. So yeah, I remember that. So this was one of those times where Mark invited me on stage and I sang Benoit Balls and I hopped off. So after the show, so we found out when we checked into the Motel 6 that they were staying at the same one. Because when my girlfriend and I would go out of town, you check into the motel, then you get something to eat, then you go to the show, then you come back to the motel and you crash.
Yeah.
So we check into the Motel 6, and then we're on the second floor, and 4 doors down, there's Scott Rayner. And I'm like,
Yeah. What are you doing?
Hey, Scott, what's going on? He recognizes me. He recognizes my girlfriend. We had been backstage at Soma before. So Scott Rayner, bless his heart, he was like, dude, I just got the rough mix of Dude Ranch. Do you want to hear it? Not
Hell
finished,
yeah.
not finished, not mastered. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. He's like, I trust you guys. You can borrow the tape, go listen to it, in your car, and bring me the tape back.
Damn.
So what's even cooler about this, Rye, is that I had an audio cassette recorder that I used to take around, for live shows. Like my girlfriend and I would make jokes in the car or whatever. It was a standard size cassette, not a micro, right?
Yeah.
So here I have in my hands the rough mix of Dude Ranch, courtesy of Scott Rayner, bless his heart.
Damn.
We go down into my girlfriend's car. We played the whole album start to finish, and I recorded it on my open air cassette recorder in the car. And that was the bootleg that I got to listen to until Dude Ranch came out.
Wow.
Thank you, Scott Rayner. So he trusted us. We got the tape back to him. That happened after the show. So we saw that Scott was there, saw the band was there, went to the show, came back, and then that's when we hung out with Scott and had some words with him, said hi to Mark and Tom. Scott gave us the tape, we listened to it, and then we gave it back to him. I remember going and knocking on the motel door. Thanks, dude. Thanks so much. Say hi to Mark and Tom and Rick. We'd always say hi to Rick because Rick was traveling with him. Say hi to Rick and whatever. Thanks so much.
Jeez, that's
Scott
crazy.
Rayner, bless his heart, right?
Do you remember any, were there any songs that didn't make it?
No, this was the rough mix of the album. So it would have been unmastered, but the same sequence exactly as you heard as the release.
Okay. All right.
So not the demos. This was the album just unmastered.
That's crazy, man. So yeah, so that was 97. So we did jump a couple years. So you mentioned being backstage.
I do have to rewind because I got some more stories.
Yeah, we got to rewind
I'm
to 10.
sorry if I keep going on, man.
No, you're good, man. We got nothing but time. So when do you get friendly enough with the band to where they're like, yo, you got backstage pass? Was it backstage passes at that time? How the hell did you even get backstage at that time?
There was no backstage passes. There were no laminates. You got a stamp. If you were on the guest list at Soma and your name was on the list, you got a stamp. And that's a picture I can share with you. The stamp, at least the night that I was guest listed at Soma, it was only one time I was backstage at Soma.
Okay.
Other than being invited back after the show or something.
Yeah.
But the one time I was guest listed by Mark personally, they stamped you on the wrist, and I think it was Betty Boop was the stamp. I'll send you the pic. But at least in my case, the way I got close to the band is I wrote Mark a letter. And I actually have, I don't have the letter I wrote him handy, but I do have the letter he wrote back to me. I don't know if listeners of the cast would be interested in that.
Yeah, I think if you have that, I think you should read that. And by the way, where would you even send fan mail to them at that time? Do you remember?
You would send it to their P.O. box. So inside Cheshire Cat was a post office box. So if you look at in the Buddha cassette, which I have one of those, and the Buddha cassette, it was actually Mark's mom's house. That was the actual house address. But from Cheshire Cat onward, it was a P.O. box that they rented.
Okay.
And
wow.
Yeah, so and you'd sign up for the newsletter. I mean, there was no internet, man. So at every merch table ride, you'd write down your name and address. And that was a burn list, meaning whatever names they got and then sent out a mailer, that list is gone and you had to sign up again. So at every merch table, at every show, you signed up again to get the latest newsletter. I only got 2 of theirs in the fall of 95. It was a typeset newsletter. Anyways, and they'd say, drop us a line, and there was the P.O. box,
Yeah, that's dope.
So let me get up to the letter, though, because there's several shows kind of in between this and the letter. Blink, this was a big one for them, man. They headlined for the first time the Palace. The Palace was one of those places. I mean, that's where Nirvana played when Nevermind came out.
Fuck.
Yeah. So Blink headlining the Palace, which was like the next step up to maybe get the Palladium someday.
Yeah.
So Blink headline sold out the Palace. Okay. I want to say it was Guttermouth, the Vandals, or I'd have to look at the flyer to find you the openers. Homegrown, probably. Homegrown opened up a lot. That was Saturday, July 13th, 96. That was the night I heard Apple Shampoo for the first time, and Mark introduced it as a brand new song. That was the night that we hung out with Mark afterwards. He was passing out stickers. Have you seen the round sticker? Blink 182 in all caps, and there's like a kidney shape kind of behind it. Gray, blue, and white. I'm sure people have seen it. It's a circle. Mark had it on his Ernie ball underneath the strings on the pick guard.
Yep.
Yeah. So they just got those printed. He was handing them out for the first time that night. Hey, we got new stickers. He was throwing them out to the crowd. And he was in the parking lot having a cigarette afterwards. My girlfriend Annie and I, again, friendly with them, hanging out, talking with him, talking with Rainer. Tom's probably back and forth, loading a guitar or something like that. And then my girlfriend showed Mark. She was, I believe, the first person to get a full color Court Jones skanking. We called it the skanking bunny, Blink bunny tattoo on her back, on her right shoulder.
Oh, nice.
Right side of the back, so left shoulder.
Yeah.
And, she was so stoked. She'd gotten this, I don't know, maybe a month or so before. So stoked to show it to Mark. He was so stoked on it. And so there was that was that kind of a backstage parking lot thing after the show.
Yeah.
And again, he's clearly remembering, oh, that's the chick from before. Oh, man, she got a bunny tattoo. Check this out. Look at this bunny tattoo. It was this really
totally
cool moment. So, all right, now we're closing in. I think late that summer, probably August, I decided to write Mark because we hadn't seen them in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And I just wrote to the P.O. box. I don't have the letter handy, but I was like, hey, how's it going? I asked him some questions about new songs and stuff and what's coming out. This letter is cool. I think particularly Box Elder on the boards would be interested because this clarifies the timeline with regards to the demoing of Dude Ranch.
Okay.
I found this letter just as we were starting our conversation today in a box. So I hadn't referred to this in a long time, but we actually had clarity about when Dude Ranch was demoed with Warren Fitzgerald of the.
I need like a breaking news sound effect. I'm not fancy enough to get that in the podcast yet.
Just the start of the riff for Damn It. That'd just be like the start of the breaking news. Like when Kirk Loder started the news with Tabitha Soren. Now David. So okay, let me just take a sip of water. And if you and the listeners want to hear this letter.
Hell yeah. So you write Mark a letter to the P.O. box, and then couple months later, this shows up in the mail.
Like a week later.
Damn, he was on it.
Yeah, actually. Oh, dude, so the letter, Mark typed the letter, like a Microsoft Word or something. But we've got the postmark date. So I have the envelope here. Mark hand addressed it to me, Dave G. And then he didn't put Blink, he just put Mark Hoppus in the P.O. box as the return address. But, oh man, as I said, Rye, I haven't seen this in years. Postmark, so it was mailed from San Diego on October 9th, 1995.
Wow.
So for those who are, managing the board's timeline and stuff like that, here we have a date stamp. So keep this date in mind, 9th October 95, relative to the comments that Mark makes in his letter about when things are happening, okay?
Okay.
So he popped this in the mail on the 9th of October. Not 95, 96. Where's my head? 9th of October, 96, okay?
Okay.
Gotta put my glasses on here. I'm an old man. All right. Dave. Hey there, what's up? I totally remember both you and your girlfriend from the shows. It's cool when I look out and see people at the shows that I've seen before. It's like we're playing for our friends at a party almost, you know? So is your girlfriend still stoked on her tattoo? That is so gnarly. She definitely gets props for having the balls to do something like that. I think that now we should totally change our style of music to country or something so that she'll bum out on her tattoo. In any case, you asked about the next album. We are in the process of writing the songs for it right now. We have the music done for 13 songs, but we still have to write lyrics for about 5. Yes, Apple Shampoo will be on it, as well as A New Hope. Lemmings and Waggy will also be on the new album. We are going into a studio here in San Diego next week to demo the new songs before we leave for tour again, where we are going to Canada and Japan. We will probably begin recording in earnest in October or November, and the new album will be out in January, February. I can't wait till we have new shit out. Cheshire Cat has been out for almost 2 years, and it is surely time to move on. That's rad that your girlfriend is starting to play bass. I wish that I knew how to play bass. It would probably help the band a lot. No, those aren't our girlfriends in the M&M's video. They were models hired by the director for the day. It's strange because I had not seen them at all since the day of the shoot. And then they ended up coming to that Palace show that you guys were at. Well, I have to bail. I have a lot of work to do. I'm moving into a new place as soon as we get back from tour. So I have to get all of my shit together. That's cool. Annie is moving down here. When she's here and you come down to visit her, we should all hang out together sometime. Take care and I'll see you soon. Are you guys coming to the Descendant show at the Whiskey on October 8th? If so, I'll see you there. If not, keep in touch. Your friend, Mark. So he would have written this a little bit prior because it's postmarked the day after that show at the Whiskey, right?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing like they would write and stamp a bunch of stuff and then take like a bunch of it to the mail all at once, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, he probably wrote that. I mean, I'd have to dig up when I wrote my letter. I don't even know if I have a record of that. I think I just have a turnout of it, you know?
That's just so mind-blowing to me, man. Like, Mark Hoppus is writing you a letter in the middle of writing Dude Ranch. Like, what the fuck? That's so cool, man. Yeah. I'd love to see more and read more of these letters, by the way. If any of the listeners have like fan mail from back then, totally send them in to me or to the Blink-182 online social media accounts. Like, I would love to see those, and shit, we can make an episode out of just reading those. That's so fucking cool, dude.
Yeah, and I mean, I should point out, Rye, like, you know, me and my girlfriend, we were like no special snowflakes. You know, this is what a band at their scale did. They answered the mail and said, dude, I remember you from that show. I hope to see you at the next one, you know?
Yeah, and just build it up.
Here's where it gets interesting. You were asking about guest list at Soma and how all of that happened, right? So this is many years removed, so I feel comfortable sharing this with you. But I suspect that my girlfriend at the time had the hots for Mark. And Mark had the hots for my girlfriend. And maybe trying to make that happen. Now, I don't have any confirmation from her, although we still do keep in touch. I've kept in touch with her. We've been friends all these years. So anyways, you know, she wrote Mark and said, hey, I live in San Marcos now. I don't know the contents of this letter. But as a result of this contents of this letter, she must have left her phone number because Mark called her. And I still have the audio recording from my girlfriend's answering machine of Mark. And I'll pass that audio to you and we can cue it up for the listeners.
Yeah, we're going to put it in right here.
Annie, what's up? This is your friend Mark from Let's Do It Bang, Blink-182. I got your letter, and excuse me, hang on, I'm going to die real quick. And you guys said that you wanted to come to the show on the Voiced. I believe at Soma, you and Dave wanted to cruise down, And so, yeah, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to try and page you right now. Bye.
So as you can see, right? So he got her letter, and he's wondering if we're going to the show at Soma, and would you like to be on the guest list, right?
Sure.
So, I'm not, is an invitation to me personally? Does he want to get my girlfriend's pants? I don't know.
At that
Maybe
point,
it's
who cares?
Maybe he's just being friendly. And what's funny is he left his number, or they paged each other or something. So she had Mark's pager number. So I also have a recording of, this is Mark Hoppus's personal voicemail on his beeper. There were no cell phones, right, in the fall of '96.
Yep.
On his beeper. So let's listen to that.
This is Blink 182. Leave us a message or your phone number, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Right? Isn't that wild? Like, he's just that, like, that's how you got a hold of the band. Like, you're Len was the manager. You're Len at Soma, and you need to get a hold of Mark for some reason. That's the beeper that you would beep, and then Mark would call Len back, right?
Yeah.
Or Rick DeVoe or whoever.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. I mean, I had a pager. I remember those days. I don't know if a lot of listeners did or not, but it really was a different time. So as you're going to more and more shows, we've gone through some of your dates you went to through your ticket stubs. Were the crowds getting bigger and bigger and bigger? Are you seeing their fan base grow at the time and them starting to get bigger?
Well, I mean, this is kind of cool, right? So that show that Mark put us on the guest list for, right? This was Friday, November 1st, 1996. The first time that Blink headlined the main floor at Soma. I mean, so that's kind of rad. That the one where I happened to be on stage and backstage and guest list, first time ever they headlined the main floor. So they were always, at least for the year prior, right below someone like Pennywise, right? Right below someone like Face to Face, okay?
Yeah.
And now they're the headliner. The openers were Joy Killer and 98 Mute, and then the lowest tiered opener was Carter Peace Mission, and they were a pop punk band in San Diego that we saw.
Wow. That's crazy, dude. So you basically were there with all access for their dream coming true, essentially, because they've always said that, like, headlining Soma on the main stage was like they knew they would make it. That's all they ever wanted.
Well, and that's the conversation we had with Scott backstage, right? So Soma had a main stage, and then there was like this hallway, and there were like some like dressing room kind of areas. And there was like what you'd call on Johnny Carson or something, the green room, right? So like the room where the band was allowed to chill with their friends.
Yeah.
And so I was hanging out there. Tom was there with his girlfriend, Jen. Scott was there with his girlfriend. And Scott was funny, I kind of related to him as a fellow introvert. I think Mark and Tom, at least back then, were much more extroverted. And I didn't feel as comfortable. Maybe I engaged probably, more with Mark than with Tom. Tom was just a freaking goofball. He was just, guy was high on Skittles all the time or something. But Rainer would be like the quiet guy in the corner, like just, drinking a soda with his girlfriend. And we, I'm there with my girlfriend, couples. We'd sit down. Hey, Scott, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a month or so,
Yeah.
Whatever the last show was. So I remember distinctly talking with Rainer, and he was beside himself, and he's like, Dave, I got to tell you, man, this has been the dream, since we were playing those first side stage shows in the dungeon. And I can't believe that we've sold out the headlining main floor of Soma.
Wow.
And that moment is kind of precious to me because 2 years later, May 1st, 1998, Scott's last show with the band, they had sold out the Hollywood Palladium as the head, right? That next, if they made it to the best they could do in San Diego, that was SoCal. If you headlined the Palladium, you were up there with Bad Religion, with Weezer, like that was a whole new level. So to have him say that and like 2 years later, that would be his last show is kind of, I don't know, kind of special.
That's crazy. And I know, throughout the years, seeing your posts and stuff, you always were a little bit closer with Scott and maybe more friendly with him. I mean, how was Scott? Was he just super quiet all the time? I mean, was he out there signing autographs or taking, I don't know, shaking hands with fans just like Mark and Tom were? Or was he always just kind of in the background?
I mean, it's not shyness. It's classic introvert, extrovert, right?
Yeah.
An extrovert wants to shake hands with 100 people and sign 100 autographs and get all that energy. And the introvert just wants to have like an intimate one-on-one conversation, right? So all the encounters I had with Scott, either me or me and my girlfriend Annie, was always just a one-on-one intimate conversation. We're talking at the Motel 6 and he's like, here's this tape, man, just please bring it back to me, right? So your classic introvert teddy bear, heart of gold, but doesn't want the crowds and the busyness and the energy that I think Mark and Tom were very attracted to. Just wanted to have a quiet conversation. So Scott would be the one in the parking lot after a show smoking a cigarette, where if you walked up to him as an individual and wanted to talk about something specific and interesting and not fawn over him like some kind of celeb, it's a very engaging, very warm guy.
Yeah.
That's my
It
take.
sucks. Yeah, it sucks that he kind of gets almost a bad rap, and there's still questions surrounding the ending of his time with Blink, and I think he probably likes the fact that he's kind of under the radar the past 20 years or whatever. But I do think Scott deserves some credit, and I'd love to hear his story or his perspective over the past few years. But if he's happy, I guess that's all that matters. So we need to get into hanging out at Mark's apartment. What year was that? When did that go down?
So basically, yeah, like in the letter, Mark was saying, I'm moving into a new place and then I'm going on tour, right?
Yeah.
So he basically, I don't know what his living situation was, but he got an apartment, a 2-bedroom, to share with his sister Ann Hoppus.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, I believe, in Rancho Bernardo. So I might have to pull up the ticket. So basically, like, we went over to Mark's place where he would socialize. Tom was there with his girlfriend, Jen, as I recall, Mark and Ann, and Annie and myself. And it was just a regular, we're BS and we're hanging out. And again,
Wow.
I don't know. Maybe Mark has the hots for my girl and just wanted to kind of see if he can move that forward. I don't know. I was just like, hey, I get to go hang out with Mark and Tom. And
wheeling it.
I can really paint you a picture of this because it's one of those memories that you have that's just so freaking vivid, right?
Yeah.
I got relentlessly trolled, by the way, on the Blink boards when I did a long thread about like the anniversary of this experience and how much it meant to me. Everyone was just flaming me left and right.
That's what people do on forums.
Yeah, and there's a joke on the boards. If you know the joke about Mark's mom's lasagna recipe, that's what the story is.
Laura wanted to know about that patient on the boards when we were gathering questions to ask you. This was important to her. So is this that night as well? Is this going to tie in with the apartment story?
This is that night, and there's a bunch of coalescence here. Okay. So I can establish the date by bringing up. I have the ticket stub for the movie that we went to. It was a movie called Ransom with Mel Gibson. You know this movie?
I actually do.
It's total garbage. It's like total late night TNT movie garbage.
Yep.
But you have to remember back then, movies were cheap, dude. It was like $4. So you would go to the movies like every weekend just to do something, just to do shit. Unless you had cable, sit at home or something. But usually you want to get out of the house because you're living with your parents. You're like, you want to get out.
Yep.
And, take your lady out on a date or whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I used to go to the movies all the time. Then we'd go to the arcade across the street.
Yeah, here, I have the movie ticket. Okay, so we have confirmation. Okay. So this is November 9th, 1996.
Wow.
It was a Saturday. And we saw Ransom at 10:30 p.m. at the Poway 10 Cinemas.
The Late Show.
Yeah. And Poway, because Tom wanted to get home and he's closer, because Rancho Bernardo, where Mark and Ann lived, is just north on the 15 from Poway. So to establish the timeline, I write Mark the letter and he writes back, says, hope to see you at the whiskey. We see them at the whiskey. My girlfriend Annie writes him a letter. They communicate, voicemail, phone call, or whatever. We get guest listed to be at November 1st at Soma for the first time they sold out headlining. And then 8 days later, we're hanging out at Mark's apartment. So it's kind of like a boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, again, like, we're not special snowflakes. This is just bands at their level, like, made friends with their fans, and you became a little bit part of the family or whatever. This happened to be, we were in that sequence at that time. So it's Saturday, November 9th. We go over to the place. I mean, I can picture the layout of the apartment in my mind. It's just a really vivid memory, right? This band that you've loved for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And now I'm sitting on the couch with Mark's acoustic guitar and like I'm clarifying with Tom the riff for Benoit Balls. Like
Oh,
I was
shit.
literally like, I was like, dude, Tom, I don't want to nerd out, but how does that walk down go? And I'm noodling it, and Tom's like, actually, Dave, it's like this, you know. And he takes the guitar and he redoes the hammer on for me, so I can see from him how it's played, right?
Wow.
And then on the TV in the background was The Secret of Nymph on VHS, which Tom, I don't know why, was obsessed with this movie. And he's like quoting it like sarcastically during the whole time that we're kind of hanging out. The Sparkleys, the Secret of Nymph song in the background. And yeah, and we're just having conversation and stuff. And they're cooking. Ann and Mark are really into baking this lasagna in the oven. And they're on the phone with Mark's mom, who incidentally I met years later when she worked at Barnes & Noble. That's a whole nother story. And they're like clarifying the recipe with her, and they're like, is it mommy sure, blah, blah, blah. And we had Mark's mom's recipe lasagna, and it was freaking delicious. And then we rolled in our separate cars. We caravanned. That's the term. I don't know if you use it where you live, but caravanning in California is when all the cars line up and you follow each other to your destination.
We don't do that in Indiana.
They made a big joke about it in the movie Swingers. Everyone in LA, there's 5 cars with one person in each car going to a party.
That's
so
funny.
We caravanned to the movies, and we're driving. Annie and I were in Mark's car with him and Ann. And Tom and Jen were in his red Toyota pickup with the sticker, the Blink handicap sticker on the back. And we're driving along, and Mark's like, Annie, Dave, I have the demos for Dude Ranch. Do you want to hear it? He didn't say Dude Ranch because they hadn't titled the album yet. So he was like, I got the demos for those songs I was telling you about. Do you want to hear it? So on the way to the movies in Poway and on the way back, Mark played us the entire demos of the Dude Ranch sessions. The ones he's referring to in the letter. Now, this brings up a point of confusion for those that kind of maintain the fan timeline. We know that Warren Fitzgerald recorded Enthused, and we know it was way earlier than the summer of 96 because it's on the Wasting Time 96 EP, right?
Yeah.
Which came out I believe it came out in spring 96 for their touring, and then it was available in San Diego that summer. So that's got to be an earlier demo than the session that Mark's talking about, which is like late September, right? At the time that he's writing that letter. Yeah. So I'm curious if Fitzgerald did those, or did they do a separate session with Trombino? I have no idea. And I don't know if anyone knows this information and corresponds with you that could clarify.
Yeah.
But that's one of those nagging questions, like, what of the Dude Ranch demos? P.S. by the way, Mark, Tom, Travis, Scott, whoever's listening, please release the Dude Ranch demos. All we want, all we pray for to baby Jesus every night is a 2-disc Dude Ranch Anniversary Edition, remastered album on that first disc, and those demos lovingly presented on the second.
That'd be so sick.
Whoever's listening, right, Rye? Are you with me, Rye?
Yeah, that'd be so sick. I'd even be down for like a special booklet with like never before seen photos,
all the collaged photos,
stories.
And I'm one of those, the label's like, hey, we need material. I'll send you everything I got for something.
Yeah.
All the flyers,
we will do whatever it takes.
Seriously. So there's 2 things in particular I remember about this night. We're listening to the demos in the car, and Mark's like a proud papa. It's like he has a newborn baby.
Yeah.
And he's playing them, and as I recall, they're not in the sequence the way they were sequenced on the album. They're just the sequence that they were demoed. And they didn't demo tracks they already had in the bag. So no New Hope, no Lemmings, no Waggy. This is just demoing the new songs, okay? And maybe this is to help them write the lyrics like he was talking about in the letter, right? I remember Mark was so proud. Damn it. He was like, first of all, it was at that time it was called Damn It, Son of a Bitch. And that's a quote from Beavis and Butthead. I don't know if you knew that. But the original title of the song, and he would announce it live, was Damn It, Son of a Bitch. So he said that, and heard some of the others. But he pointed out they must have been experimenting in the studio because, I'm Sorry, the last track, has that fade out, right? It has that fade out. And then I think just the guitar kind of tone from the amp hangs on and everything else fades out. So on this demo, there wasn't that fancy trick, just the whole track faded out. And Mark pointed out in the car, he goes, yeah, this is the first time that we've tried to like fade out a track, like a big band would do on like a big album, like the radio song.
Wow.
He'd fade out the track. And he
Yeah.
made a point of saying that, and that stuck with me. I remember that.
That's crazy, man.
So that night, hearing the demo sessions from Dude Ranch. Another thing about that night is Scott was recovering from having broken his heels. Are you familiar with this story?
Is this the one where he got drunk and jumped out of a hotel window or something, or off the balcony?
Yeah. So as I understand it from more than one source, when the band signed their major label deal to MCA/Cargo, basically MCA was distributing Cargo, it was an MCA deal. They threw a party at the Hotel Coronado, which is a very famous hotel on the water near SeaWorld, in a Mission Beach area of San Diego. And the story was Scott got very drunk and jumped off. It was probably, because he didn't die, probably, a second story balcony of the hotel room, and broke in some manner, I don't know if it was a fracture or hairline, but broke both of his heels. And so as a result, I think the majority of the actual Dude Ranch sessions, he recorded in a wheelchair, basically.
That's what I've always heard as well. Did you see him at that time, like in double cast or anything, or no?
No, like I saw Scott play live November 1st at Soma. I did not see Scott until January after the recording of Dude Ranch.
Wow.
So, we asked him how he was, when we saw him at that January show, and he gave us the tape of the unmastered album. But anyways, going to Mark's apartment where he lived with Ann, we brought a card, a get well card for Scott that Annie and I made personally. And what I did is I took a scan, or I think it was a Xerox copy, of the Court Jones Skanking Dancing Bunny, and I redrew it so that the leg that's raised up had a cast on it, and then there was a crutch underneath the arm of the bunny, and we said, "Get well, Scott," because Mark had told Annie and I what had happened.
Wow, it'd be interesting to know.
So we were like, "Can you just give this to Rainer, because just get well soon, man." We just felt real bad about it.
Gosh, that sucks.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. So on one night, you're hanging out at Mark's apartment. You have his mom's lasagna. You hear the Dude Ranch demos. Like, what an evening for a Blink fan.
Yeah. Mark properly taught me how to do the hammer on arpeggio.
Yeah, personal guitar session, training session from Tom.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So, as I said, I didn't see Scott until January. So Friday, November 15th, Social Distortion was the headliner at Hollywood Palladium, and Blink was one of the openers. I think they were the highest tier opener below Social Distortion, which was huge. They had a record that had just come out. That song, I Was Wrong, that's that 96 album by Social D. It's a big comeback record for them. So Scott's out of commission, okay? And I believe it was Josh Freese that filled in that night. I want to say it was Josh. Maybe someone can chime in on the Twitter or what have you on the podcast and confirm that. But I think it was Josh Freese that was subbing. Tom made some jokes, as I recall, about Scott not being there, right? And my girlfriend and I didn't care for Social Distortion. I went to a lot of shows where we saw Blink as a opener or the mid opener and left.
Oh yeah.
Like, didn't stay for the headliner.
I've done that with plenty of shows.
I paid, $15.50, here we go, for Social Distortion, but I didn't care about them. We left.
Yeah.
Now, the benefit of leaving like that midway is that you catch the band, right? Because they're either in the lobby or the parking lot or backstage, because they're not watching Social Distortion either.
Right.
So I remember this. So I remember Josh Freese was subbing. Tom made some jokes about it. And then my girlfriend and I went and we milled around in the lobby, and here's Tom. And there was a label rep there. I mean, this would have been from MCA, right? Because they had signed. And Tom was like giddy, and he was like wooing the label guy, like, "Hey, we're here. We're the main headliner right below Social Distortion. Our band's going to take off, man. You don't even know, man." Like, he was so giddy and just cherub-cheeked is how I remember Tom, just being excited, this band was his little baby. He started in a junior high lunchroom,
Yeah.
As he tells it. So I remember Tom's by the merch table hanging out, and Ann wasn't selling merch because she was kind of over that. Probably Cam Jones was there. or whoever else they had at the time. And I remember Tom, I was wearing, you can see the shirt I'm wearing right now on our video. This is one of the first, if not, I think it's the first Blink shirt ever designed, back when they were screen printing them, like in Mark's mom's garage. I think she was on MTV talking about this. It has the two naked guys with the wiener joke that Tom hand drew on the back, and then on the front is the Buddha era bunny. I don't know. Did you guys know this, that Scott Raynor drew this bunny, the one with the little watch?
Yes,
Scott
we did.
Yeah.
I did know that, and it may have been because of you, to be honest. But yeah,
So
I didn't know that.
Scott Raynor drew this. Anyways, I was wearing this shirt that night, and Tom is giddy, and he's talking with the label rep. Me and my girlfriend were, I think I was probably trying to buy more Blink merch, or maybe I bought Lemmings that night. I have no. But Tom's excited, and he goes, man, like, you don't even know how many fans we have, and how many fans are into us, and how long our fans have been into us. He's like, here, and he's like, Dave, because he recognizes me, right? Because literally the 15th, it's just like 6 days before I was going to the movies with him. So he's like, Dave, come here. I want to show this guy your shirt. And so he shows him the shirt, and he's like, man, that's the first shirt we ever did back when we screen printed them ourselves. He's like bragging to the label rep about how DIY they were,
Wow.
And that was just a really cool moment that I remember.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
I already talked about January 97. That was Ventura. Oh, yeah. Valentine's Day, 1997. Really cool, small show in Orange County. So we only had to drive like 20 minutes. Blink co-headlining, or Blink, it's weird. Co-headlining, but like Blink played last. What do you call that? But
yeah, that is weird.
Blink and Unwritten Law, and then it was, I think, some ska bands. I think Safe Ferris played. They were an Orange County ska band. This was at the Old World Hall, which was small, like half the size of Soma. Awesome, right? And this is the show, Valentine's Day, Feb 14. I mean, they had played it in January, but I distinctly remember them playing Damn It. And the crowd went wild because none of them had heard it, right?
Yeah.
Mark goes, hey, it's a new song called Damn It Dan Somovich. He doesn't say it's going to be a single. He doesn't say anything. But the minute that riff started, that was an instant hit. That was an instant classic. And I'm sure, Ryan, you've heard bands or heard songs, like I'll hear the new Spanish love songs, or I'll hear the new Menzingers and go, that's a single. Like, when you hear the song. And Damn It was like that. I mean, do you remember the first time you heard Damn It?
Yeah, the first time I heard Damn It was how I got into Blink. So that was literally the song that introduced me to what became, lifelong favorite band. So yeah, it was a hit to me for sure.
So, I mean, did you hear it on the radio or see it on MTV or what?
No, my buddy had the promo CD. So I used to go to my buddy's house. I'd get dropped off there before school, 4th grade. And, this is when you had CD players. And, at the time, we were listening to random shit like, I don't know, Smashing Pumpkins, AC/DC, whatever his dad had. And he had that Damn It promo CD. And we would just listen to that over and over and over. And I think
just the one track CD.
Yeah, just it was the single.
So you were like Spotify streaming one song over and over again before that was a thing.
Pretty much, yeah. So yeah,
you were racking up those 58 million views on the new Rihanna.
I was
all by yourself.
They were getting those streams for me early on, but yeah, man.
I mean, how would your buddy have gotten that? I mean, I only got mine, on eBay maybe in like 99 or something.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like a radio giveaway or like part of like a package his parents won or something. I don't know.
Well, those did show up a lot in like the dollar bin at like used record stores. So like if you go to a local used record shop, you'd see promos. Have you ever seen those? Like they take a hole punch and they like punch a hole in the cover of the art through the barcode.
Yeah. And it was and I think it just had Damn It, and then I think the clean version of Damn It maybe afterwards.
So many options, right?
Yeah, so many options. But yeah,
I don't remember the clean version. What do they just blank it, or do they just it when Mark says?
I think they just blanked out. He fucked her. But I've told it on the pod before. But I think that's what drew me. Honestly, is for one, the guitars and the catchy riff, but just that CD saying, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. I'm in fourth grade. All of a sudden it's cool. Like you're cussing in the song. He's saying he fucked her. Like it was just so taboo and like against everything at the time that I had been like raised to hear. I just fell in love with it, man, ever since then.
Well, I mean, it's funny. So the first time I heard the song was in Mark's car, the demo. And then the first time I heard it live that I remember, I bet they played it at Ventura, but the first time I remember hearing it live was this Valentine's Day show. And it's funny, Rye, I knew immediately it was going to be a smash hit. And the reason I knew was I felt that Tom had his Bad Religion moment, right? So for me, the song, the single that hooked me to Bad Religion was American Jesus, right? So American Jesus starts with a bare riff, goes through it once to completion, and then the song starts. And that's exactly the structure that Tom followed with Damn It. We hear the riff all the way through, then the chord progression and the rest of the band start, and the riff continues as the lead riff. So I don't know if Tom intended that to be like, I'm gonna do what Bad Religion did. But that was kind of, to my punk ears in SoCal, that was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be Dude's radio single. That's what he's doing. He's doing the American Jesus thing. And your reaction, kind of, love at first listen, was the same for me in the car, listening to the demo, and the same hearing it live for the first time. The crowd went crazy. And I think they were like, it's like a dog whistle to the Epitaph back crowd. They hear that riff, that major riff, and they're like, oh yeah, okay. This is a punk rock single, right?
Yeah. To this day, I mean, I still love hearing them close with it and just rocking out to it, man. It's just, it's killer song. Really is.
Well, and that's the reason why when I decided to sticker up my Fender Strat exactly 1-to-1 in replica of Tom's guitars, I remembered it from those days. I chose the guitar that you see in the Damn It video, right? So other people put stickers on their Strats. I stopped. I froze it in time for the Damn It video. There's no Lagwagon sticker. There's none of the other stuff you put on there. I love that too. If you look at the Damn It video, someone asked him to cover up the sponsor logos. So if you look at his guitar in that video, he's taken little bits of electrical tape or gaffer tape, and he's put them over the Arnett's and the Airwalks on the guitar because of the liability of having that on TV without permission, right? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and take a look at that because I hadn't noticed that. For the listeners, by the way, we're on a video chat, so I can see this. But Davey has an exact replica he has built of Tom's Fender Strat, the white one. He custom made the stickers. They're exact. It's amazing. He has Tom's exact Marshall amp with a custom made blink. What is that even called? It lights up. What do you even call that?
It's a logo plate behind the lights in the amp.
The logo plate. It's amazing.
That blink, which, by the way, you font dorks should know, is Times New Roman bold, all lowercase, very tightly set, tightly tracked. That's the Blink logo. I don't know. I have no idea the story behind Tom's Ampeg Blink logo plate and who made it for him. I would love it if we had someone on the podcast that had those answers.
Yeah,
I don't know
if
cool. Am did it for him, or if it was Kerry Key, or any one of those cats that were hanging out back in the day. But we loved looking at Blink's amp with the logo and knowing that was our Blink, because even after the name change, he kept that for like a year. And we would be like, that's our Blink. That's our Blink. No 182, right?
It's so sick.
It's hard to believe there was like a hipster contingent around fuck 182. They're Blink. I call them Blink. I know that's hard to imagine, but it's totally true. So there were those of the scenesters on the barricade going, fuck yeah, there's Tom's amp with the Blink, no 182.
Yeah. Well, it's just kind of a nod to the OGs. I mean, yeah, we're going to have to do like a video, like a Vidoc or something where we show off this replica, and Davey played some for me earlier. The tone is just amazing. It's so rad. We'll get into that at some point.
All right. So I don't want to keep everyone too long. I know we've been going on forever here, but let's hop forward 97 into 98. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you hear Damn It live. That's 97. So lead us into wherever you want to jump into one of your shows, either later 97 or into 98.
Yeah. So, I mean, I remember when the Damn It video premiered, because we all knew when it was going to premiere, and it premiered on 120 Minutes, hosted by Matt Pinfield. This is not the night where Blink is interviewed. That was later in 97. This was just Matt Pinfield debuting the Damn It video. And we stayed up on Sunday night. I think 120 Minutes is on midnight or something. We stayed up on that Sunday night in June to watch it debut and to see our band on MTV. That was a huge deal. I think both Ann and Tom have talked about when they heard Eminem's. I think Mark said too when Eminem's was first played on the radio in San Diego on 91X, and that being like that moment and that thing you do when they like hear their song on the radio in the car. For us, I mean, it's weird. I mean, I'll talk about this later in kind of 98 when I kind of drifted off, but it's not hipster bullshit. You do really feel a personal ownership of a band and a personal relationship with a band when you were in an all ages punk club environment, right? I think it's very different when you only see a band in arenas, you only meet them in paid meet and greets. I think that's and I'm not judging, I'm just saying it's a very different dynamic.
Yeah.
So I'm not like this anymore because I've gotten older and wiser. But back then it was very much like, you know, you'd hear, fuck them, sellouts, fucking Bad Religion, signed to Atlantic, fuck those guys. Like, that was real. That was a really real thing. The minute a band got picked up by a major or distributed by a major, that's it. They were out. You didn't go see them anymore. Fuck those guys. I wasn't as diehard about it as a lot of others, but that was a very real thing. And I know that sounds strange in today's world when the first time you hear a band is on Spotify and they're already playing arenas. That was very real. So when Blink was on MTV, when that video premiered, we were like happy, sad, you know, I guess like melancholy would be like, I was happy for them. I was so fucking proud of them.
Yeah.
In all honesty, and my throat kind of gets choked up when I say this because I haven't talked about it in a real long time. We were so fucking proud of them to come up from, you know, opening at these smaller shows and just being the guys you talked with in the parking lot. Like, it's like having your team win. I don't know if you're a sports fan. I'm not a sports fan. But for those of my friends that are, like when your team wins the big game or they make it to the finals, like I've had friends, you know, I've Zoomed with who were fucking crying because their team was in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And that loyalty that some people feel for sports, that's what we felt for our fucking bands. So it was 6 1/2 dozen the other. Man, I'm not going to get to see them in such small places anymore. But we were so, and I'm going to curse it out, we were so fucking proud of them for what they achieved all on their own. There was no band more DIY than Blink. And I credit Mark, Tom, Scott, Carrie, Cam, Ann, Court, everyone who came up during that time. Rick, I mean, all those folks. At the Tahoe agency, Jesus, they would have been nowhere without the Tahoe agency. They're booking folks. But we were just so fucking proud of them. And it was kind of heartfelt to see that on MTV. So next time I saw them live, this was the Warped Tour date for 97, right? So they're touring behind Dude Ranch, but they're still not known at a very national level. I mean, even in San Diego, they were still just a scene band, right? So this is Wednesday, July 2nd, 1997, at the, it's kind of like a fairground area, like down by Mission Beach, down by the water. Band's Warped Tour. This is where I got serious about taking pictures. I hadn't really taken a lot of pictures. I took the disposable camera to Soma that time we were on the guest list when they headlined for the first time. And those are photos I can share with you, Ryan. And after that, I you know, it was probably the video on MTV. And I had this moment where I was like, something's going to change. And I better start capturing these moments that I'm having right now of my youth and their youth, because it's going to be gone. And I can only say that now. You know how you have an intuition and you do something?
Yeah.
And then later, you know, you have a couple drinks and you get kind of sentimental and you go, I think that's why I did.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I started taking photos at every show on the barricade, but I think in retrospect, I felt time was slipping away a little bit.
Yeah.
I was getting older. They were getting older. The shows were getting bigger. And I was like, you know what? I want to capture every last little fucking bit I can of this preciousness.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
yeah. So apart from Soma, this was the first show, Warped Tour, where I was like, Annie and I were on the barricade. I had a camera. I'm shooting the whole show. Now, back in the day, you got a security pat down. No cameras allowed. And of course, there were no smartphones. There are no cameras with phones. So you bought a disposable camera. I'm sure you've seen them, right? You're not that young, right?
Yeah, I use plenty of them. Yeah.
Yeah, the little plastic box, right?
Yep.
And then you would turn it in at Walgreens or whatever you develop.
Yep.
So we would buy a disposable camera, and then what you would do is the dude would do it. Girl couldn't get away with it. The dude, you'd take the disposable camera and you hide it in your junk.
Yep.
So you just put it down in your boxers in front of your junk, because the dudes aren't going to pat you down there. And that's how everyone got in with a disposable camera to take photos at show. So now you know the secret, kids. That's the secret.
That's how you
pull
out your nutsack smelling disposable camera to shoot the show with.
Right. So I'm happy to share those images with you, but I have a whole slew of images here, but a great story. Tom was at the merch table. I didn't see Rainer. Mark was nowhere to be found, but Tom was hanging out at the merch table. So Annie and I go up. What's up, Tom? And what's up, Dave? What's up, Annie? Oh, your new album's out. We talk about the album. Hey, we saw your video on MTV. And then Annie notices that Tom has got a skanking bunny tattoo on his arm. Have you seen this? I think he still has it.
Yeah, he still has it. Yeah, he kind of built a sleeve around it.
Yeah, and he did it more like a seal. So the bunny's in like an oval, and then there's a stripe that goes all the way around his arm.
Yeah.
So that bunny is 1-to-1 scale of my girlfriend Annie's bunny.
Sick.
So Annie's like, dude, you got a bunny. And Tom was kind of like, I know, and yours was that first one that Mark told me about. So I have a photo I can share with you of the two of them showing their tattoos side by side. So she's wearing a bathing suit top because it's Warped Tour. And then her back is right up to Tom's arm. And you can see their tattoos are 1-to-1. They're the exact same scale. I don't know if Annie gave Mark the artwork. She might have. I can ask her.
That's sick.
So now we're kind of creeping into 98, right? And things are really going to change for both the band and for me. So by this time, I'm in college at Cal State San Marcos. My girlfriend Annie and I have broken up, and she's left college. So anyway, so now it's just me going to the shows. I'm still on the barricade. By this time, I've got nostalgic even for my own recent past, and I'm like taking photos. I'm remembering the good old 12 months ago. You had those times, you know?
Yeah.
When you're 22 and you're like, man, I remember 21.
Yeah, totally.
So that was me, like remembering my recent Blink years. So by this time, I'm still in college, and I'm a history major, but I'm taking some like art and design classes. I almost got a minor. And who is in my digital art class but Ann Hoppus?
Oh, shit.
What are the odds of this? So this was the spring semester 98 would have started like midway through January. I show up the first day of class, and I'm like, Ann? And she's like, I know you. What's your name? And I'm like, Dave. So we exchange a few stories. Oh, yeah, lasagna, you know. And then she's like, I know you. You've been hanging around for 2 years. So it's kind of cool. And I mean, Ann is one of those you'd be awesome to have on the podcast, right? Yeah. Just because, you know, she wrote that book, and I was so fucking proud of her when that book came out. I went right away on Amazon and left a 5-star review for Ann's book. Tales from Beneath Your Mom, I think it's called. Came out in like 01, which is kind of the story of the band up to 2000.
It's great and has some great pictures in it. I have it. It's
right. There's photos of shows that I went to and flyers. To have that was such a gift from Ann to be able to give that to the fans. So, Ann, if you ever hear this, thank you for that fucking book. So anyways, Ann's in this class with me, and it's funny. She has a cell phone, and she's like awfully proud of the fact that she has a cell phone because they were not common. And I remember she smoked cigarettes at the time, and she'd go out and have a smoke break from class and talk to her boyfriend, Damon LaPaz of River Phoenix. They were still called River Phoenix. They weren't Phoenix TX yet or whatever. And I remember they were on tour, and she'd go out and have her smoke breaks and like talk to her boyfriend on her cell phone. And we were buddies, so I'd like go hang out with her while she had her cigarette and like talk to her boyfriend. And this was a digital arts class, so we're like learning Photoshop for the first time, you know, that kind of stuff. And I remember Ann was so proud. her Photoshop collage project was a Blink collage.
Oh,
and she
shit.
brought in these photos, and we're being taught how to use a scanner and all that stuff. And she's bringing in all this Blink stuff. And she was so proud of her brother and of his fucking band. And her first Photoshop project, Ann Hoppus, was this cool little Blink collage that she made.
Wow.
So yeah, so we'd hang out and we'd chat as classmates, and I had known her from before and met her from before. So the Snowcore tour started in San Diego. This would have been Monday, February 9th, 1998. And I had already bought a ticket, but Ann was like, dude, I'll put you on the list. So this was interesting. An interesting Rainer moment here. Kind of getting the feeling like things are not going great with them. So I was right on the barricade. I watched Blink, and then fuck Primus, I have no interest in them. I was out. So I was up on the barricade, and I was like, hey, Mark, what's up? What's going on? And I think I mentioned to him, I mentioned why Annie wasn't with me or something. So it must have been later in 98 in the spring when I told him on the chat that we broke up. But I was like, yeah, she's not here. We had a couple words. Like Mark was still smoking at the time, and he'd like have a cigarette before the set started. And he'd like come down into the like trench in front of the security barricade and like talk with people. And I was one of those people that he would talk with. So I'm on the list, but it's not for being on the stage during the show. It's like the after. At this point, it was like a sticker. It wasn't. This was more of a pass, like after show, and then there's pre-show, and then family on the stage. So I could only hang out after the show. So I watched the set, and then fuck Primus, I'm out. And I remember I went right back through the double doors, and I had a sticker. And then there was Rainer having a cigarette, and I helped Rainer load out a little bit. He was putting his drums in. They have like those sleeve bags. Have you seen those that people put their individual drums in? And then that's what they pack up. And so I helped Rainer for a minute while he was smoking a cigarette. And he was kind of down and out. He was kind of bummed. We just talked for a few minutes. He's like, yeah, man, I'm tired. I'm stressed out. I'm not looking forward to this tour. It's a winter tour, so they're going to be in the snow. It's going to be shitty. And I remember getting a vibe like he wasn't stoked or whatever.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially because a couple years ago, there was a Reddit post where somebody swore up and down that they saw Travis fill in on drums in February of 1998, which would have been pretty close to what we're talking about here. But then Travis's official first date was at some point in May that year. So did you see them again, or was that the last time? That wasn't the last time you saw him with Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I can throw my own personal timeline down on it. I think we have confirmation. I believe it's clear in Ann's book. I don't have it on hand. It's clear in Ann's book that Scott's performance was a little dicey on Snowcore, and either Josh Freese or Travis Barker, I know even Brooks Wackerman at some point filled in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, so before we jump too much into 1998, I wanted to hear your thoughts and the scene's thoughts, the Blink fans' thoughts on the Dude Ranch release. So Dude Ranch dropped June 97. We talked about some of those shows, but first I want to hear, what was the fan base's reaction? What was your reaction? For
many of us, me, my friends, the folks in the scene, aside from the people going, fuck them, they sold out, they're on MCA, they're on MTV. Dude Ranch was like an album of the summer, right? And Blink was smart, right? They released Enema in June. I think Jacket dropped in June. Untitled dropped in September. It was a fall release. So
Untitled's not a summer album.
Untitled's not a summer album. That's a winter with your whiskey inside album. But Dude Ranch was the album of the summer. I don't know if I mentioned, but I play drums, guitar, bass, and piano. So for me, the summer was consumed with playing Dude Ranch on guitar and playing Dude Ranch on drums. I think I played it on drums 5 times a week, So the thoughts were, wow, Trombino is such a great producer. I loved Static Prevails that he did with Jimmy Eat World. Why is the mix and mastering on Dude Ranch so shitty? That was the first thing that me and a couple of my musician friends thought. If you put on the CD mastering, note, please remix and remaster Dude Ranch and re-release it. Thank you. If you put on Dude Ranch, it sounds like it's compressed through a goddamn AM radio speaker in like an old car. All the beautiful dynamic range that Jerry Finn was able to tease out of the band on Enema, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Even the analog warmth of Cheshire Cat. I mean, it's a little rough around the edges, but there's a real analog warmth to the guitar tones on that album. All of that got smushed down and like waffle stomped down the drain into the mix and master that is Dude Ranch. And that was a fucking bummer, man, to put on track one, Pathetic. You can't even tease out Tom's rhythm hits on the chords from his lead riff. What kind of mix and master is that? I mean, you know, pay Lord Alge what he's worth and remix and remaster that freaking album. So that was the first impression. Songs, dope songs. What's up with this mix and this master? Now, there was a second observation. Do you want to know what it is?
What's that?
Not enough new fucking songs.
Yeah. So for the listeners who don't know, really, once Dude Ranch dropped, they had already been playing 4 or 5 of those songs for like 2 years.
Over 2 years.
Over 2 years.
So to refer back to Mark's letter to me from October 96, we're in the process of writing songs right now. We have music done for 13 songs. Again, Dude Ranch Deluxe Edition. Let's hear those songs that didn't make the record, right?
Yeah.
You know, because he says 13 songs, but then he says they have to write lyrics for about 5. So perhaps some of them only got demoed as instrumentals, or just sound checked and never demoed, right, Ryan?
Yeah.
You know, and then he says, yes, Apple Shampoo will be on it because I heard that in the summer. And it says Lemmings and Waggy also, right? And New Hope, right? So the bummer for me as a fan and my other friends who were fans was, okay, what do we got? We got a song from the Buddha tape. Well, I've had that for forever. Okay. We got New Hope. Well, they've been playing that live for 2.5 years. Called Princess Leia, by the way. It wasn't called a New Hope until Dude Ranch. It's called Princess Leia. They had demoed it. We have the demo of that. So we've got Lemmings. I have that on 7-inch. We've got They Came to Conquer Uranus. So I've had Waggy. And again, these have been played live since 95. So I don't know about you, but if, like you mentioned, you love 311, like what if they put out a brand new album and then, you know, 5 of the songs you'd been hearing live for 2.5 years?
Yeah, it'd be weird. I mean, it'd be like, you know, Tom released Rebel Girl with Angels and Airwaves over a year ago, and that's probably going to be on their new album that's going to come out in half a year. And to me, if that's on there, I'm going to think, yeah, that's kind of weird. I wish you would have.
Well, I mean, that's the business model now, though, right? With streaming, you do a single, maybe several singles before we get an album.
Yeah.
But to already have them too, and frankly, they're superior. I will go toe to toe with anyone in the Blink community that the 7-inch, you know, recorded, I believe, all in one session with Jeff Forrest, and I hope you have him on the podcast.
He's supposed to come on. Yeah.
We have so many questions to clarify about what was recorded when and what sessions. I mean, for him to open up the double time vaults to us would just be such a blessing.
It's in the works.
Okay. So that's it. Can we have a deluxe edition of Dude Ranch and get Ann Hoppus and get Jeff Forrest on the podcast? Those are my birthday, Christmas wishes, and I know birthday and Christmas for me are both in December. So
I'm hoping to get Trombino too. To be honest.
Trombino, dude.
Yeah, I think I might be able to. No promises, but I'm working on it.
Just get people more famous and important than me. That's all I.
It's funny to hear you complain about the mix, though. I mean, I don't really have the ear to care too much or notice that, but it's funny for people who bitch about California and the mixing and all that in this new era of Blink. This goes back to Dude Ranch, ladies and gentlemen. People have been complaining about mixing and this type of thing for a long time.
Yeah, and I'll go toe to toe with anyone. I think the Uranus sessions, you know, Waggy and Lemmings are far superior on the 7-inches releases that Jeff Forrest recorded and mixed at double time. Also, I don't know if you asked, but for me, peak Blink are those I'd say 4, well 5, right? Because the Good Times television cover, which they did for the Surf video and for the Good Times tour, I believe, Jeff can clarify, was recorded in the same session. So those 3 tracks on Uranus and Lemmings and Good Times, what I call the Uranus sessions, that for me is the absolute pinnacle of Blink's musicianship, to me personally. So yeah, those are the things that I recall. So some disappointment, but also just like thrilled. What was a bummer is those pre-Dude Ranch tracks got, and I don't know, I've seen this with bands a lot. The minute they release the album, the tracks that are playing from that album before they drop, then they start playing other ones. So Apple Shampoo fell right off the shelf very quickly. I think there is a bootleg of the last show with Scott that I was at, and I think it was played then. I was stoked to find that bootleg. I only found it last year of that show I was at with Scott, because there you see a lot of those songs kind of for the last time ever. Like the last time you ever heard Enthused, the last time the original sort of Scott's take on Mutt was played. Anyway, my final comment on Dude Ranch was it was so awesome to get another album from a band that pretty much only had one. And I think Apple Shampoo and Emo are probably my top tracks off that. And it was a bummer to see them not play Waggy anymore, not play Princess Leia anymore. I don't think, I maybe heard Enthused once or twice. But anyways, I still love it. Dude Ranch is still like a top 10 album for me.